Hi,
the
everybody, and
tune.
welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. Hope everyone is having a fantastic day. My wife just said this. This is the ex-Muslim call to prayer. That's true. That's exactly what this is. I'm together here with Rebecca. Rebecca, how are you doing?
Good, good. How you doing?
You are from Israel, as far as we understand, right? I
As
got that
far as
right.
I know.
Okay, good. What are your origins? You are Jewish, of which background? And so how are
So
you,
I'm
why are you occupying this land?
first of all, I occupy it because I can occupy it, so I choose to occupy it. Second, actually I was born in Russia. My dad is from Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's family moved to Russia, before World War II and stuff, World War I, World War II. From originally like from Lithuania.
So in Lithuania, the Nazis had a plan to exterminate basically the Jews of Europe region by region, and then mark it as Judenfrei or Judenrein, which means cleansed of Jews or free of Jews. And Lithuania was, I think, almost entirely, by their definition, cleansed. And it was like 90-something%, together with the other Balkan countries.
And my dad, that is from Georgia, Mountain Jews. That's right. Like my great grandparents came. Like this is how they said. Yeah, I think my dad said it. Yeah, my grandparents. So they came down from the mountain, like when they were this and this old. Anyway, so they were mountain Jews, but Georgian. For some reason, Mr. Mustache guy decided that Georgian Jews are not Jews. I don't know, but they never reached this area. Like this is a weird story where they said it's like, no, they don't count. But like the Jewish community in Georgia was extremely strong, where my dad grew up in Kutaisi, which is on one side was the #1 crime city in the whole of USSR. But on the other hand, it was the most where Jewish community was super strong. So when they communists, they managed to close up the churches in Kutaisi, but they didn't manage to close up the synagogues. And my dad would tell me as on Saturdays, they would all go with the talit outside, and a lot of people would go study in the Jewish school that weren't Jews. So it was a very different experience.
Have you ever been to Georgia yourself? Did you ever go there?
I have been, and when we went there, we went to by the way, we came to Israel, I was 1 year old, so and then it was like 2-time refugees because there was the civil war in Georgia, and then my parents flew to Russia, and then Russia collapsed. Basically, they came with just what they had on them. Lot of warm clothes, like they were so uninformed that they came in November wearing this, heavy Russian coats that they saved because they didn't realize that they're coming to a country where you don't need that kind of stuff at all. And they're like, whoa, it's so hot. But yeah, so, and then, yeah, so then the USSR collapsed, which people don't know which was a situation like when I was born. It was hunger. My parents survived day to day, like the way they describe it is like every time that they ran out of food, out of money, some sort of miracle happened. They have crazy stories about like cooking like chicken that was off because it's the only thing that they could have gotten to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And like all the side effects of that. Like crazy stories, like when I was born and people were like looking at my parents like having a baby, and these times they were like, are you guys crazy? Like people are starving. Yeah, so listen, my parents are like, they came to Israel like from hunger, and then my dad from the biggest crime city, like I don't think I should even describe like what it's like, what he saw, what he had to go through, like what his day-to-day life was there. I don't know if it's like appropriate for most people to even hear what it was like. What
Maybe you should tell more, like in more detail, your life story and some of the things that maybe some people shouldn't hear, but maybe should also hear to change their mind.
But I think it's important to understand, because like, you know, when I grew up in Israel, like comparing to surviving through food shortages, like starving on one hand, and then on the other hand, like, because Georgians were not starving, you know, it's like there is a joke, like you spit a seed on the ground and a tree will grow. This is how fertile Georgia is. But there were other issues. So my dad had to like fight every day, basically, just to make it, like physical. So growing up in Israel, it was like, so there are a few explosions here and there. It's like, you know, it's like, it's, you cannot compare the two, which is crazy to a lot of people. But this is how I grew up, was like, I'm not hungry. Like, we have food, and that, like the streets are relatively safe. So I'm lucky.
The funny thing is, when you say, you know, a few explosions here and there, this sounds crazy to some people around the world who are not very familiar with Israeli life. But so when I went to Israel, I heard this quite a bit from some people when I asked about, you know, about I don't know, rockets and explosions and this and that. They were like, oh yeah, it's just you know, we just grew up like always with rocket warnings, with, you know, seeing rockets and the Iron Dome, and occasionally bombings and attacks here and there. This is considered normal in your life.
When my mom was working in Dizengoff in Tel Aviv, there was a huge like bus explosion next to her, and then like she was behind. It was like this, the street, and that's the building she was in, and then the glass shattered. And then she just called my dad. He was like, I'm okay. And my dad was like, sure, why wouldn't you be okay? And then the cell phone and like the cell network crashed right away after she did that. And then she was like, yeah, whatever, you know. And like it was a huge like terrorist attack, like people.
Yeah.
And then now, you know, it's like my mom is also like, my dad is a cardiologist, so they're doctors. So now with like the 7th of October, a lot of people were by using their teeth. And my mom is an endodontist, like she's a dentist. Like a lot of people were, after the 7th October attack, like almost nothing remained out of them. So a lot of them were identified by their like through dentistry, like through by like recognize their teeth. So one of my mom's patient, they couldn't identify her son, so she had to like provide all the dental information of him to find him. And then and then another one of her colleagues, so he was called to the you know, where you keep, like where you bring the dead bodies, the morgue. So he had to like is also like he had to identify people there. So he called my mom's friend, who was serving in the base that was attacked by Hamas, and he called her and he asked her, where is your daughter? Where I'm getting a lot of clients in pajamas here from your daughter's base. And she was actually in patrol in like next to Gaza, but because she was on duty, nothing happened to her.
Man. So the October 7th attack happened. Lots of people, 1,200 people were at least killed. Many others were captured. Many others were terribly abused and so on. Lots of people I think, despite being used to, attacks and missiles and all that, never really expected something like that to happen. Is that
I
is
wouldn't say that I didn't expect it. I thought it's a matter of time. Like the way they
yes,
talk,
yes.
the way they say what they want to do to Jewish women, and the culture, and like hearing stories from Gaza, because things leak from there. So from time to time, you get to hear Gazans speak in Israel. Like they write us messages, like help us messages, like describing what's going in the inside. And like if that's, and my thoughts were always like, this is how they look at Israeli women. This is what they do to their own people. What would they do to us once they get the chance? And I just knew it was a matter of time for them to get the chance, because it's a weight game, like you can, I know, like we say, lo yanu velo yishan shomer Israel, like you cannot sleep on guard, but it's almost impossible to be 100% perfect all the time.
What were some of the things that you say about Jews or about Jewish women?
They really fantasize fetish Jewish women. Like I'd say it's a fetish.
Yeah.
Mm.
I'm pretty much familiar with it. I have seen so many. When October 7 happened, there were messages, there were posts on the internet, everywhere on social media. People act like now people act like it didn't happen, or we're just making it up. I still have screenshots of lots of people just
When
talking.
that happened, like I told you that too. Like I told you what I think people do with these videos.
Yeah, you did say that, and it was very, very messed up. But so what you are describing is that these people are basically having sex fantasies, which they always expressed, which they expressed even before October 7 and also during
Yeah.
October 7 and after October 7. And it's very much about killing and raping and misusing and this and that. That has been around forever, and you are aware of that. Would you say the
Yeah, but
the average person in Israel is also aware of that, or no?
so a lot of people don't want to think about it. I think a lot of people know, but it's hard. It's like mentally hard to keep it in your mind all the time. So you're like, there's always that hope that it will be a little bit better, like we see, like in Arab Israeli society, like the way they treat women got better with time. But even then, like, we have patients coming, like women, Arab women, Muslim women, that tell us horrific stories from inside the community, which the thing is, like, if they try to get out, is like the whole community comes after them.
What do you think the problem is, and why do you think they are like that?
I think there is a lack of regard to feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot less in Israeli Arab community, but in Gaza it's super common. You marry people not with love. A side effect of that is a lot of times that fathers don't love their children, and then nobody loves nobody, so it's everybody is seen as a tool.
Oh yeah.
Like your children are tools, women are tools, other people are tools.
Do Jewish people in Israel generally learn about what the other population really believes and how they are? Do Jews learn about Islam, Muslims, Muslim culture, how they think, and so on, or is this kind of not very much talked about?
Like I learned like the 5 pillars of Islam and like basic stuff like that, and like maybe some like stories, like Arab stories more than Muslim stories. People don't really know how much of it is out of Islam. That's for sure. I didn't know either, like, until I started watching your videos. But you feel that something is wrong. Like, you can tell something is wrong. I remember I was sitting with like a Muslim girl, and we were talking, and then she just said some Muslim story about like how some men went to sleep for 300 years, and then everybody around him were Muslim or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told her some Jewish stories, and I saw her the look in her eyes. I was like, your stories are so different. And I was like, why? And she was like, you have women in them. And I was like, yeah.
I mean, I only talked about this before when I talked about prophets in Islam, because there is a thing, right? Like in the Bible, in Jewish and Christian tradition and belief, you have women, you have female figures that play a role in the Bible, that were leaders, that are referred to as prophets, that participate in the stories. In Islam, you don't have them at all. There is no nobody that is referred to as a prophet, no woman. These people are not acknowledged. It's very much man-centered. So that's a funny.
I'd say more like, if you take like statistically, like there are way more like men, especially named men versus named women in the Bible. But the thing is, like, our holidays, we have like, we read we have Esther and Ruth, like 2 scrolls named after women that we read every year in 2 major holidays. On top of my mind, like that's the scrolls that we read, like they're about women, and like those stories are so like key in our culture.
That is quite a difference. If you grow up with that as a woman, you have there is a role that you actually play in your culture, and there are things that you learn from your culture. There are texts, stories, and so on that you can follow. But in Muslim culture, there is no such thing. You are basically just left with the whole male aspect, and the women are basically they just exist and they just serve. That is an interesting difference.
And then like I showed you, Eshet Chayil is something that you read every Friday, the description of an ideal woman. Like it's like we sing it every Friday to celebrate the mother, like the matriarch of the house, and like the woman. And the kind of person that it describes is like complete opposite of the woman that is described as ideal in Muslim culture.
What is that again? That is a part of that is from the Bible.
Somebody wrote it, woman of valor. Proverbs 31.
Okay. Proverbs 31.
Somebody translates my.
That's good. That's good. That is the description of a woman. Okay. That's what you read. Yeah, you don't really have such things in Islam. You do have some things for women in Islam, like a woman must be obedient and not raise her voice and not appear arrogant, otherwise her husband might put her in her place, and she can be one of the many wives, or can be taken as sex slave, and so on. So it's kind of unfair to say that women don't have anything in Islam. Women do have something in Islam as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder where those ideas come from.
Yeah, that's
from
true.
A religion that acknowledges that you cannot have marital relations without consent, versus a religion that allows way more than that.
That's true. So where were we? Okay, so you learned about Islam and the Muslim aspect later on. So you're saying that the average person in Israel, the average person who grows up Jewish in Israel, doesn't know much at all about the Islamic way of thinking and all that.
Yeah, but you cannot hide what you see.
But what they see, what do they think that what do they think the reason for the things that they see is? Do people learn that Islam is
Honor killings.
Oh yeah, okay. Do
What
do
do you
people
mean? What do
learn?
we see?
Do
We
Jewish people
see
learn that
people.
Islam is like a bad thing, or do they just learn that it is a regular religion and these people are just sometimes doing bad things?
It's weird. It's like, it's like you discover things as you go. There is also this thing that how much can you shock a child? Like just like you know that you need to teach a child that there are enemies out there. You learn you have to fight, you have to defend, but
don't you think that is a weakness, because it kind of leads to Jewish people not really knowing what their enemy is and why they do the things that they do.
it's not like the percentage of people who don't understand who the enemy is very low. And then the difference between right and left is not the difference people think of, okay? The real difference between right and left is that the left thinks land away and that we would be strong enough to defend ourselves. The right doesn't believe that that you can do that, and it will that you cannot ignore that the number of geography. The West Bank is a hill next to the where all the next to Tel Aviv. It's basically you throw a rock, you hit a person.
What you basically just said is that the left often believes that you can just give land away and then have peace and just defend yourself.
No.
The right doesn't believe in that.
The left believes that we can be strong enough to defend ourselves militaristically, no matter what. The right doesn't believe it.
But even then, so what I mean is, so you said that the average Jewish person doesn't understand Islam and doesn't understand what Islamists believe in and what they do. So, there the problem would be that
I think the biggest problem would be with the ultra-Orthodox who don't understand, like they like live under a rock in a way, and it really like blows up right now. I even heard that there is a movement now of a lot of Jewish women who said we're gonna inside the ultra-Orthodox community that say they are refusing to marry ultra-Orthodox men unless they get more familiar with reality.
That's a weird thing that I heard when I went to Israel, and I didn't even think about that before, because when you are outside of Israel, you learn a lot of you hear a lot of stuff about religious Jews and non-religious Jews and ultra-Orthodox Jews and how people view the society and so on. But when I went there, I heard and realized from many people that the ultra-Orthodox population of Jews are very much kind of viewing the whole conflict peacefully and indifferently and with some ignorance that shelters them, basically.
Immense ignorance, like ignorance that in a way they went so far away from like Judaism that you can say that they're not like just as almost just like just as far as the woke people went. Like this is
That's so weird. It's so weird that that the ultra-religious population, ultra-religious people would do something.
The ultra-religious, they don't even, a lot of them don't study the Bible because it's like it's a super controlled environment. They lost connection to earth and reality. It's not funny anymore, it's like you guys have to like snap out of it.
White Lily says, wait, people from Gaza were sending help me letters to Israel. If so, more people need to know. Oh yeah, can you explain
people
what
won't
you meant?
listen. People won't listen. there are a lot of Gazans who like that manage to escape or manage to be in a situation where they can talk about it. Nobody cares.
What exactly do they talk about, and where do they talk about that?
About how they get trained, that they have to enter open graves to practice death, the way they get abused, what happens to you if you if you show signs that you are not into slaughter, that you don't want to participate in killing, like the way, like I don't know how graphic I can go.
And
But there are
why
stories, but people don't want to hear them. People don't want to listen. Also, they are horrifying. People don't
why do
want
you
to
say
believe
people
them
wouldn't want to listen? Because they don't want to.
because they don't want to. The reality is that even if I start talking, people are like, this is too much, this is too much. They don't want to hear. Like a lot of the things, like I told you, like a lot of people, like even outside, they come and say, oh, did you kill a Palestinian? And then when I try to talk about it, they will go, it's too much, I don't want to hear.
Okay, yeah. I understand. Maybe these things are these are things that more people need to know and to understand. Maybe these are things that need to be publicized more. That
They're publicized, but then they get shadow banned or just banned or removed. Israelis try to do it. Israelis are under real ban and real, like, you don't understand, like Israelis get banned from every social platform all the time, get shadow banned all the time. Israeli Arabs that escaped like the Palestinian authorities, like that try to even Iranians, Assyrians, Copts, like everything. We all get pushed down and blocked or cancelled, like by the media, like, by the media, like the media itself, like social media, everywhere.
that's the messed up thing. Do you
Like,
remember
how do
when we
you
went
even
to?
put this information out?
Do you remember when we went to the hostage forum together to the Bring Them Back place, where both of you got very angry because of their desperate inability to deal with things? One thing they told us was that it is very difficult to get their proper message across and to keep people's attention because Jews are very few people and Israelis are very few people, and Muslims, for example, they stick together no matter what, and they are huge in numbers and they can make people believe everything, whereas Israelis just try to
Yeah, and
desperately
then
speak out and can't. And the thing is, we learn all the time that like people say dumb stuff like, oh, Jews control the media, Jews control the world, Jews manipulate everything. Where
they can't. They they get life threats inside TikTok. They get life threats when they work inside, like in the companies. Like Jews are being like threatened when they work in those companies, in the BBC, everywhere. They're under threat.
Irit Reddy said, I grew up in the second Intifada. I was 5 years old, seeing on the news detached limbs, exploded bodies from exploded buses. As a child, I didn't know what I was looking at. When my mom saw me, she quickly pulled me from the TV. Am Israel Chai. I remember you telling me about Intifada times. And it was very dark.
Yeah. I remember, you have to understand, it puts you like in a very weird situation. One day my mom came home. So she saw this woman, pregnant Arab woman, like with a hijab and everything. And she saw like it was hot and she saw that she was struggling. So my mom opened the window and asked her if she needs a ride. And she said yes. And then she took her to wherever she needed. And she said, when she came home, she was like, I felt so bad for her that she's like obviously very pregnant. She looks like she was struggling walking. But then the whole time I was thinking, what if she blows up somewhere? Because like a lot of times they would dress up as pregnant. She said when she came home, it's like she said like, I did it, but I felt so weird because I kept imagining that scenario. What if I'm bringing someone to somewhere?
Yeah, yeah. And you have to kind of live through those times to understand how that kind of thinking actually comes to your mind because of all the things. People who, I guess, didn't live through those times and didn't see the news at that time, or didn't grow up in Israel at that time, didn't live in Israel, seem to be unaware of how reality was back then. But it was like the Second Intifada was literally just, it was a war in the streets with people blown up, with buses set on fire, all kinds of different things everywhere, all over the news. And people are living their regular lives, but outside there is a bus exploding, for example.
And that's not the best part. The best part is when you read the English newspaper and it says that a Palestinian child died, and two Israelis and two Israelis. And when you get in the bottom of it, it was a Palestinian child who exploded himself at some cafe.
We even have a thing, I recently shared this, there was an Amnesty
And
International
it was
report.
happening during the Intifada, like I remember. And when 9/11 happened, I just thought maybe you'd understand how it feels like. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently shared
and
a
I
report
thought like maybe
from,
people would report things more fairly, but they didn't. Just like
Yeah.
they weren't there after October 7th.
There was a thing, right? There was a report by Amnesty International in 2005 in response to the Intifada, where they reported that during the Intifada, Hamas and other Palestinian terrorist organizations were regularly using children to commit terrorist attacks. And they had a list of like, just this week, a 15-year-old child was carrying explosives and ammunition for a terrorist attack. Last week, a 17-year-old child did this and this and this. The week before, two 15-year-old children were again strapped with explosives, and so on. This is an actual Amnesty International report from 2005. I shared it recently on Twitter. Can't put it up here again.
And that's on their side. Just those people work for them.
Yeah, yeah. So that was the reality. That was the reality back then. So the Palestinian
There were also way
movements,
younger children who did that.
Yeah, they were actively directly using children and strapping them with bombs and otherwise letting them carry ammunition or weapons to send them as terrorists. And when those children die, they would use those children to say, look, they're killing our children are dying. This is what they're doing to us. It's so messed up. And you know this, we know this, but when you put this out to the average person who is unfamiliar with the conflict, they think this is an exaggeration or it can't be real. But this is the reality. It has been reported with so much. It's the reality. All right. Follow Rebecca and stuff, and see you next time, everyone. And as always,
thank you. Stay away from Islam.
Yeah.